This is Miles, broadcasting from what used to be Station Delta 5, somewhere along the old coast. I don't mark the days anymore, but the sky does. And today, it's red again. I woke to that color bleeding through the cracks in the steel sheeting. Not sunrise red, not the kind poets once wrote about, but something harsher. Rust mixed with blood. It stains the air with a warning we used to ignore. The rain hasn't started yet, but the wind has turned. You can taste the shift in it, like copper on the tongue. I checked the filters. The last layer's gone yellow, edges curling. I'll have to rotate in the charcoal weave tonight, and that's the final roll. If anyone out there has a working exchange post, I'm open to trade. Water for mesh, iodine tablets too. Nearly out. The condensation traps are humming lower than usual. I ran diagnostics. Ammonia packs are losing charge. Might be solar degradation. Might just be entropy. We're all succumbing to it. In slow, grinding ways. The difference between living and dying now is measured in microns and sealant. For those tuning in from lower zones, surface exposure in the next 6 hours will blister skin in under 60 seconds. The atmospheric burn index climbed past 400 this morning. That's not survivable without triple layers and silver dampened sleeves. If you're near the rail bridge, the one with the hollow tower, there's a leeward side you can shelter under, but only if you don't breathe too hard. The birds aren't calling anymore. Used to be. Even when the sky changed, they still tried. Fewer now. The silence came before the storm. And when silence arrives first, you learn to worry. I wasn't always alone here. 5 years ago, maybe more, maybe less, I watched a red sky with someone else. Her name was Lena. She called it sunset wine, the color the sky turned before the air went sour. We'd sit on the roof of our apartment block, wrapped in whatever blankets hadn't yet molded, and watch the last of the contrails dissolve. She said the sky was trying to remember how to bleed beautifully. That was before the rains started to hiss when they landed, before plastic grew brittle, before the cities grew quiet. She had a laugh, like bare feet on wood, soft, unexpected. She'd paint even when the brushes fell apart. Abstract reds and ochres like she was trying to hold the sky in place with color. We argued the night she left. Or maybe I did all the shouting. It's hard to remember the contours of anger when grief sandblasts everything smooth. The last thing she touched was a jar of seedlings. Kale, I think. They never grew. The soil was already dead. Funny. I didn't start broadcasting until after she was gone. As if I only found my voice once no one was left to hear it. Sometimes, when the air is still and the red light slants just right, I imagine her out there, still watching, still waiting for the sky to turn beautiful again. There's a sound that comes before the acid hits, a kind of distant crackle, like old wires shorting inside the clouds. But today, that sound came from the receiver. I was cycling through frequencies as I do every morning, chasing ghosts more than signals. But channel 3, the one I've kept open for months without reply, shifted. Not louder, just shaped. Less random, as if the static was trying to arrange itself into something. It wasn't voice, not quite, but there was rhythm. A break, then a stutter, then 3 pulses. I recorded it. I've played it back 6 times. It's there, faint, like something caught between 2 dimensions. Or someone. Before the world fell apart, I used to write about collapse. Ecosystems, oceans, policy failures. Thought I understood patterns. But this doesn't feel like a pattern. It feels like intention. If you're hearing this, and you've got a working decoder, pull the waveform. Check the mid-range. There's a dip I can't explain. And here's the thing. Birds are gone. Wind's quiet. The tower's not vibrating the way it does when a storm brews. The silence isn't empty. It's waiting, like a breath held too long. I've boosted the gain on the outbound antenna, just in case someone's listening from outside the burn zones. Just in case someone's trying to speak through the noise. Just in case. Lena found a way to reply. I know how that sounds. But when the world forgets how to speak to itself, sometimes the only thing left is to whisper back. If you hear the same rhythm, if you pick up the same break, stutter. 3, respond on channel 3. Even if all you can send is static, I'll know. This is Miles. Still in the air, though the air doesn't care. The rain has started. I can hear it now. Not like it used to sound. Not like water pattering on window panes. No rhythm, no softness. It lands like acid poured onto rusted steel, each drop hissing its way into the bones of the earth, into the bones of what's left. It's the kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it consumes. I watched it yesterday, strip the paint off a support beam in under 2 minutes. The old roof's holding, for now. The sealant's bubbling, though. That means the first layer's already gone. Outside, the buildings melt in silence. No collapse, no spectacle. Just slow surrender. The rain doesn't rage, it wears you down. Digs into concrete, chews the insulation from wire coils, erodes anything that once stored memory. I went to check the backup batteries. They were covered in a slick yellow film, fallout from the last rainfall. I scraped some of it into a glass vial, ran the chemical test. Sulfur compounds, high. Traces of vanadium and something else. Something faintly radioactive. Maybe from the jet stream, pulling northern ash across the grid. Food caches are no longer safe unless sealed inside ceramic or thick plastic. Even then, the humidity inside the walls is turning flour into paste and rice into soft rot. I've started double wrapping everything in decomposing wax paper. It's like trying to keep time in a bottle that leaks. For those tuning in, if you're still above the aquifer belt and you've got any kind of tarp collection, build your rain rigs now. Don't wait. Even the worst filtration systems are better than the sludge this sky drops. And remember, don't touch it. I ran one glove across a metal hatch to clear it, and the glove turned brittle in 20 seconds. Like touching acid, but colder, smarter. This rain doesn't just erode metal. It erodes memory too. You forget how water used to feel, used to smell. You forget how clean tasted. The spider frame was her idea. June, that was her name. A mechanic before everything. Said she used to fix snowplows in the mountains. Said snow made sense. It obeyed gravity. Could be pushed, could be melted. Rain like this. She said, you don't push it, you work around it. She scavenged radiator piping and parts of a garden trellis, bolted it together with cracked knuckles and sheer spite, suspended the tarp like a sail strung over bent bones, angling each surface to shed rain without tearing under the weight. It worked. It collected runoff, trickled through coffee filters layered with charcoal and crushed seashells. Condensation. We could drink. Not always safely. Not always without taste. But we lived. She taught me to test pH with burnt match tips and ash. Taught me how to listen to the water, not for sound, but for absence. If it's too quiet when it drips, she said, it's too thick to trust. She left behind a notebook, spiral bound, missing its cover. I found it again today while reorganizing my supply chest. I hadn't opened it since the rain got in. It's swollen now, water warped, but legible. Her handwriting still sharp, engineer's angles. Page 17. Filter bed must be changed every 40 hours in active acid front. Otherwise, risk of chemical reactivation in stored liquid. She died because we didn't change it on time. I wanted to save the last charcoal for my mask filters. Thought I was being practical? She never blamed me. She just stopped breathing one morning. Her lungs probably went brittle in the night. No scream, just stillness. I still use her rig, patched it 3 times, replaced the shell layer with repurposed awning. It's not elegant anymore, but it remembers her hands. Funny, you measure people in what they leave behind. Some write poems, some plant gardens. June built a spiderweb to drink the rain. It came again. Through the hiss of rain on the roof, beneath the drone of static, something cut through. A voice, or what was left of one. Clipped, broken, but unmistakable. Delta 54, garden intact. Survivors here. I froze, hit record, played it back 3 times. Each time, the words bled further into the white noise. But it's there. A woman's voice, frayed around the edges like tape left too long in the sun. Delta 54. That was one of the government-coded eco-bunkers, part of the Garden Initiative, a last-ditch project to build biomes underground, sealed from atmosphere. Everyone thought they failed, that they were vaporized when the thermosphere collapses started. But maybe not all of them. I checked the map. Delta 54 was rumored to be somewhere inland, past the dried-up riverbed, near the wind-fractured silos. No one's confirmed it in years. Most people gave up, believing in gardens when the rain turned to acid. But if it's real, if there are survivors, the signal didn't repeat. Just that one line. Then silence. But it didn't feel like an accident. It felt like someone reaching across a canyon with a whisper. I've started adjusting the transmitter, prepping to reply. I'll boost the gain tomorrow and check the power bleed on the outbound line. If this is a real link, it might be the last one we get. Or maybe it's just a ghost writing static. But even ghosts speak truth sometimes. This is Miles. Still here. Something moved in the lower corridor last night. Just one sound. Software, too soft to be debris shifting. Too careful to be wind. I thought it might have been rats. But rats don't breathe like that. Quiet, measured, like someone afraid to take up space. I waited until morning. Took the winding stair down to the old storage unit. The one that used to house backup food drums and expired medical packs. I unlatched the door. She was there. Small, no older than 7. Wrapped in a shredded rain tarp, face streaked with soot or something darker. She didn't flinch, didn't run, just looked. In her hands was a photograph. Curled at the corners, a woman in a red coat standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. I asked her name. She said nothing. I offered water, crackers. She took them without words. Her silence wasn't frightened, it was practiced, like silence was a language she'd learned before words. She's here now, sitting 6 feet away. I think she's listening. I don't know where she came from. I didn't hear the outer hatch open, didn't hear the ladder shift. She just appeared, like a memory made real, too quiet to disturb the air. For anyone out there who's still listening, if you've lost a child near the Delta region, if you had a daughter with dark hair and hollow eyes, there's one here now. But she doesn't remember where she came from. Or maybe she remembers everything and chooses not to say. When I was a journalist, before the floods, before the shutdowns, I covered something called shelter syndrome. It showed up first in the Arctic zones, where children had been kept underground for nearly a year during methane collapse. The symptoms weren't violent. They were quieter. Eyes that didn't blink. Voices that didn't rise. Children who no longer asked questions because they no longer expected answers. They learned to listen instead, for footsteps, for coughing fits behind plastic walls, for alarms that signaled danger, and for silence that meant something worse. The girl hasn't spoken since I found her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't sleep loudly. She breathes in time with the generator, slow, rhythmic, like the hum of power gives her permission to exist. I watch her as I speak. She watches back. unmoving, not unfeeling, just careful. I don't think she trusts sound anymore. Maybe she's afraid words might bring the wrong kind of attention. I've started broadcasting softer, not just in tone, but in weight. I've stripped away the sharpness, made room for pauses, for breath, for someone else to eventually speak into the silence I've filled too long with only my voice. I once read that if a child goes long enough without being spoken to, their sense of self begins to unravel. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that whatever name she once had, she carries it quietly now, tucked behind her teeth like something fragile that might snap if spoken aloud. So for now, I speak not to the world, but to her. About the weather, about the way condensation beads on the copper piping, about how the static has changed again. And sometimes when I do, her eyes move. The child pointed to the receiver today. Not suddenly, not urgently, just deliberately. One finger extended toward the console where the static pulses low and constant. She looked at me, then the dial. No words. The rain outside has quieted again, but the sky hasn't cleared. There's a thickness to the air, not a moisture, but something heavier, as if the world itself is holding its breath. I've been hearing clicks in the static, subaudible shifts. Not voices, not yet, but something close, like fingers brushing across old tape. I thought it was my imagination, but now I'm not sure. She hears it too. I told her not to be afraid. She tilted her head, like that word doesn't mean what it used to. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe afraid was a luxury we've outgrown, like sunlight or certainty. To anyone listening, monitor channel 3. Pulse range between 8.2 and 9.0 hertz. There's something moving beneath the carrier wave. Not strong enough to trace. Not yet, but it's patterned. It doesn't feel like a storm. It feels like a tension. I've reduced my transmitter output by half. Shorter bursts, narrow beam, less to hear, less to be heard. If you're broadcasting, speak softer now. They're listening. This is Miles. The rain has eased. I stepped out this morning, wrapped in 3 layers of salvage vinyl and heat-taped seams. You can't call it walking anymore, more like pressing forward into a memory of wind. The world outside is hushed, but not peaceful. The quiet after the storm isn't silence. It's stunned breath. The road is curled at the edges, asphalt once black, now laced with silver cracks. Veins of chemical rot where rain pooled too long. Cars sag like jellyfish now, their frames too soft to bear their own history. Glass lumps and puddles, no longer sharp, just defeated. The air stings, even through the mask. Not pain exactly, not heat, just friction. The molecules fight you. You can feel the atmosphere has changed. Denser, more hostile. You breathe through filter cloth and still taste rust. There used to be color here, moss even, ferns that clawed up from cracked gutters after the first blackouts. I remember thinking nature would come back faster than we would. I was wrong. The acid didn't just erase what we built. It rewrote the soil, the air, the instinct to grow. I found a railing coated in tar and memory, touched it with one gloved hand. It disintegrated. Not snapped, not cracked, just gave in. To those still in Sector Delta or near the drowned plains, wear sealed layers even after the clouds pass. This isn't rain you can wait out. This is residue that lingers in the bones of everything. The atmosphere itself has become caustic. The sun is trying to rise, but it can't break through. It's there. A faint glow behind the thickness. But light doesn't scatter the way it used to. It sinks, folds in on itself. The sky has forgotten how to open. I passed the old grove this morning. There used to be a cluster of trees here. Poplars, I think, lean green fluttering like nervous hands when the wind moved through. What's left now are silhouettes. Their bark has gone obsidian, slicked with something thick and tar-colored. Not sap. Something darker. It drips like oil, like the trees are bleeding from the inside. I stood there for a while. I remembered reading long ago about how acid rain breaks down the waxy layer on leaves. Stomata shutting down, chloroplasts collapsing. But this isn't just leaf death. This is vascular death, trunk death, core decay. I cracked one open with a metal crowbar. Inside it was hollow. Not from age, from chemical starvation. It wasn't rotting. It was empty, a void where water used to live. And here's the real truth. Photosynthesis is failing. Not just here, not just this grove, all over. Chlorophyll is breaking down at scale. Light isn't enough anymore. There's too much sulfur in the stomatal pathways, too much nitrogen burn in the root zones. The carbon cycle isn't cycling. We're watching it seize. Watching the lungs of the earth forget how to breathe. I used to think we'd survive in pockets, scavenging, improvising. But without green, we lose the anchor. No conversion, no oxygenation, no carbon trap, just imbalance. Rising and rising until even the air starts to betray us. I pressed my hand against one of the trunks. It felt warm, not from sunlight, from internal friction. The final effort of something trying not to collapse. I know that feeling. If anyone still keeps seeds, preserve them. Don't plant them yet. Not here, not now. Wait for air that doesn't strip cells. Wait for soil that remembers how to cradle life. It was perched on the antenna, not moving, just watching. A bird, real, whole, intact. Feathers the color of ash, but intact. I blinked twice, thought maybe the mask was fogging, but it didn't vanish. It tilted its head, stared at me. No sound, no panic, just presence. In a world that had erased most signs of life that didn't come from rust or mold, there it was, balanced, breathing, alive. I couldn't move for a full minute. I just stood there, air wheezing through the filter, heartbeat loud in my ears. Something about it broke the rules. Not just survival. Timing. Why now? Why here? I remembered a line from a book Lena once read aloud. Hope is the thing with feathers. We laughed at the time. Thought it was soft. Sentimental. Now it sounded like prophecy. But I didn't feel hope. I felt unsettled. Because something that lives in this environment has changed, adapted, or hid in a place we haven't found yet. Either way, it's a shift. A signal that the variables aren't stable anymore. It stayed for 21 seconds. I counted. Then it lifted, wings strong, cutting through the gray. I followed it with my eyes until it vanished behind a collapsed grain silo. I didn't pursue. Part of me wanted to. Most of me didn't trust what I'd just seen. What survives now survives differently. If birds are returning, they're not the same birds we knew. If they ever left. If you've seen one, write it down. Mark the date, mark the wind, listen closely. Nature might be mutating faster than we are. This is Miles. I wasn't even looking at the console when it happened. The child had wandered over to the transmitter. The old panel I've kept powered down for months now. It's half fused, scorched around the tuner from a surge back in the early days. I never told her what it did. She doesn't ask about machines. But something drew her there. A slow, deliberate press of a single cracked button. The kind you press just to feel it click. And then it spoke. It wasn't loud. Just a sudden tremble in the static. Then a burst, 3 seconds, maybe 4. A woman's voice, wavering like breath in cold air. Delta 54. Garden intact. Survivors here. I froze. Looked at her. She didn't smile. Didn't flinch. Just stared at the dial like it had whispered her name. I replayed the clip 6 times. No glitch, no overlap, just those words. Clear, crisp, like they'd been preserved in a bottle and flung upstream through time. She touched nothing else, just sat back down. I tried to speak, but the words felt brittle in my mouth. Garden. I hadn't heard that name in years. Not spoken aloud, not seriously. In this world, gardens are myths we bury under practical tasks. Fixing filters, counting calories, staying upright. But that voice, that tone, it wasn't a loop. It wasn't desperation. It was presence. To those of you still scanning the fringe bands, mark this. Channel 3, offset 12.09 megahertz. Shortwave irregular. Pulse code unknown. There's a voice in the storm. Real or not, it speaks. They called it the Garden Initiative, launched 3 months before the East Seaboard blackout. The official line was climate fortification, biosphere stabilization, resource safeguarding. Unofficially, it was triage, a desperate attempt to save something green when they knew the rest would burn. 12 locations, they said, codenamed for flowers: iris, camellia, dahlia. Only 3 were ever confirmed built. 1 was breached during the storm wars. 1 collapsed in a methane surge. The last, Delta 54, never verified, never found. Rumors followed, stories whispered through field radios. Someone knew, someone who'd seen hydroponics under glass. A friend who traded salt for apples. A voice in the static saying there was air that didn't sear your lungs. But hope rots quickly in a world like this. We learned not to chase it too far, not to bleed for myth. But this signal. I pulled out an old frequency atlas, scanned the coordinates embedded in the static. There's a pattern. Truncated GPS, a deep band oscillation. Not a civilian signature. Not scavenger tech. Military grade, maybe repurposed. Government. Private? Doesn't matter anymore. What matters is it's coming from the inland ridge, about 30 kilometers beyond what used to be the wind silo line. That's near where the garden was rumored to be. I patched into the old logs, my own, from when I used to track collapse infrastructure. And there it was, a small notation, Delta 54, listed as Botanical Stabilization Zone, high clearance only. No details, just a name. If that voice was real, if that message was fresh, it changes everything. Not just for me, for her, for anyone still holding out in collapsed zones, waiting for water to stop killing, waiting for green to come back. If there is even one sealed dome, one respirable space with roots still anchored, then memory is not all we have left. Future becomes a possible word again. But I don't know if I trust it. Not yet. The voice was clear, but time does strange things to sound in a broken atmosphere. Messages bounce, echo, fold in on themselves. A broadcast from years ago can arrive like a whisper from the present. Still, it was her voice. And she said survivors. I've rewired the outbound line. It wasn't easy. 2 of the copper fuses had oxidized clean through, and the old gain modulator had to be resoldered with what little conductive wax I had left. My fingers still ache. But the board lights green again. The antenna flexed under yesterday's storm, but it's still upright. It still reaches. I've recorded a reply. Nothing elaborate, just coordinates. A pulse signature, my name, my voice, softer than I expected. And then the words, "We heard you. If you're real, we're coming." I don't know if she'll hear it. Don't know if anyone will. The atmosphere eats signals now, swallows them in ion-rich clouds that warp and scatter. But I had to send something. Hope only matters when it's reciprocated. The child sat beside me as I pressed transmit. Didn't speak, just listened. Her breathing steady, eyes fixed on the static as if she could see through it. Part of me fears I've reopened something I buried for a reason. Belief. I remember what belief did before, how it carried us too far, how it dropped us when we leaned too hard. But another part, the part that still watches the sky, still writes, still speaks even when no one answers, that part wants the garden to be real. Even if it's broken, even if it's empty. Just the idea that someone tried, that someone planted something, instead of just scavenging, that would be enough. If you hear me, repeat your signal once. That's all I ask. I'll be waiting on the narrowband, 12.09 megahertz. No encryption, no gatekeeping, just a voice looking for another. I tried turning the compost this morning. What's left of it, it's hard to call it compost, really. It's just a pile of soft waste behind the station. Peels, shavings, shells, soil, old pulp. Lena started it back when the air still had texture. When we thought small rituals could hold back the dark. She believed in regeneration. Said the world could repair itself if we gave it time. Gave it kindness. Nothing's wasted, she used to whisper, hands buried in dirt like prayer. Everything feeds something else. Now the pile is dry, not in texture, in spirit. The moisture is wrong. The breakdown has stopped. It just sits, layers frozen in place, banana skin from 9 months ago, still yellowed, coffee grounds that haven't even darkened. The mycelium never took root. The worms are gone. Decay itself has unraveled. The soil no longer breathes. Microbial collapse, maybe. Acid saturation in the atmosphere has bled into the ecosystem's smallest lungs. Bacteria, decomposers, anaerobes. Without them, even death can't find a way out. It's a strange thing to witness. Life that won't grow. Death that won't finish. I knelt there this morning, hand deep in the pile, and thought of her. Of how she smiled while teaching me what could and couldn't be buried. She never got to see the garden she planned. The irony cuts sharper than any wind. The woman who believed everything returns to earth, now lies in a world where nothing does. And somehow that feels worse than erasure. It feels like betrayal. Plastic never breaks down. We knew that before collapse. Laughed about it, cursed it, tried to recycle it out of guilt. But now it's everywhere. Carapaces of old water bottles in ditches, sheeting flapping like translucent ghosts on broken power lines. Forks and containers still perfect, long after the hands that use them have turned to dust. It outlives everything. Even metal rusts, even bone crumbles. But plastic endures, not out of strength, out of refusal. I keep thinking about what else refuses to decompose. Grief, for one. It doesn't rot the way sadness does. Sadness comes and goes. It breathes. Grief just settles. Inert, heavy, impossible to compost. You carry it until it becomes part of your mass. It hardens in the hollows, takes the place of breath. It doesn't weep. It lingers. Memories, too, the kind you didn't mean to keep. The angle of her hand while sealing the tarp. The laugh she made when a tomato finally sprouted. The quiet fights. The silences afterward. I wonder what archaeologists would find here if time still marched on. A pile of unrotted things. Packages, tools, sorrow. No bones. Just the wrappers around them. No breath. Just the words that never broke down. In a world where the air is poisoned and the soil sterile, we've created permanence in the wrong places. We couldn't preserve beauty, but we've preserved containers for what no longer fits. This broadcast, this voice, this grief, all of it. Things that won't decay. She hadn't said a word since she arrived. Not even a whisper when the signal came through. Not when I handed her food. Not when I tried to speak gently about the garden. Her silence had become a kind of constant, like the wind that always found its way through the station's seams. But today she looked at me differently. I was talking again, quietly, mostly to myself, recounting the names of things that refused to break. Plastic, grief, memory, and then she said it. Lena. Just the name. No context, no inflection. Like a key slid quietly into a lock that had waited years to turn. I dropped what I was holding. My hands didn't tremble. Not then. But everything in me did. I never told her that name. Not once. Not even in sleep. I'm sure of it. She just sat there, her small face blank, her voice already swallowed, again by silence. I didn't ask her how she knew. I couldn't. The air between us felt suddenly fragile. Too fragile to burden with questions. Maybe she heard the name in the static. Maybe she dreamed it. Or maybe memory flows in stranger paths than we understand. Some things do not decompose, and maybe some things do not stay buried. Grief, names, voices. Maybe, just maybe, they find new mouths. She hasn't spoken again, but something shifted. I feel it. A door opened, not wide, just enough for breath. We leave tomorrow, at first gray. That moment just before the clouds decide if they'll speak or stay silent. The signal from Delta 54 hasn't returned, but silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it's a holding breath. Sometimes it's an invitation. I've begun to pack. 6 liters of clean water, triple sealed, enough for 4 days if we ration strictly. A solar sheet, cracked but functional. 1 collapsible basin, rope, decontamination powder, the last 2 ammonia canisters, taped and wrapped in old gauze to keep them from knocking around. A flask of fire gel, a coil of copper wire, because you never know which fence might still be listening. A filtered mask, my backup 1. Mine's already too worn to promise another 100 kilometers. And the notebook. The one June left, the one Lena never finished. They're tucked between panels of plastic sheeting. I don't know why I'm bringing them. Maybe to remember how we got this far. Maybe to remind myself what still waits to be rebuilt. To those still broadcasting, or those who've fallen to listening only. If you're thinking of moving, I'll offer this. Do not pack for comfort. Pack for failure. Assume systems will collapse in sequence. Hydration first, then energy, then heat. Don't trust sealed foods without second skins. And if you can, bring music, even if just in memory. It buys silence, a little more grace. I'm marking this log not for drama, but for documentation. Someone needs to remember what leaving looked like, not fleeing, just relocating hope. Delta 54. It could be dead, could be dust, could be another voice swallowed by the static. But it called once, and that's enough to start walking. The terrain between here and the inland ridge has changed since the last storm cycle. There are places now where rust ignites, truly ignites. Oxygen and oxidization fusing with the smallest spark of metal friction. They call it rust fire. I've seen it take out half a scaffold in seconds. A place burns and yet there's no flame, just rapid collapse. Heat from corrosion alone. To move safely, you need to map more than the ground. You need to map timing. The rains fall in pulses now, guided by temperature pockets and carbon haze zones. It's not random, it's sick rhythm, a logic of failure. Move during the lull between saturation events. Watch the birds. If they reappear, even for a moment, you have 3 hours of breathable air. If they don't return, stay hidden. Look for blue film on soil. It means aluminum runoff, high acid concentration. Don't step there. Don't even breathe near it. When you find moss that's turned black and brittle, it means the groundwater's poisoned and rising. Step over, not through. And when you reach higher ground, don't rest on stone. Stones crack beneath sudden pressure. They sound like they'll hold you right until they remember they're tired. Sound is key now. Places that should echo but don't. Those are traps, dead zones, vacuums formed by chemical density. They pull heat from your body in minutes. I used to think the world had become wild again. But no, it hasn't become wild. It's become deliberate. It knows where it wants us to fail. But if you move with the silence, if you read the scars left by those who tried and almost made it, you can make it too. She stood at the door this morning before I even spoke a word. Boots already on, one too large, one too worn. Coat zipped, eyes clear. No questions, no plea, just presence. Like leaving was never in question. Like she had always known the direction we'd go, even before I believed we'd go at all. I didn't tell her to come. I didn't ask her to stay. I just nodded. I packed half my food into her kit, halved the water. Not because she asked, because I wanted her to have what I had, even if I didn't know why. She still hasn't spoken again, not since the name, but she listens with a kind of intensity I envy. The way she watches the static, the way her hands rest near the dial, like it might whisper something only she will understand. She's more than a child now, not older, not hardened, just attuned. She hears the world in ways I've forgotten how to. When I laced her mask and adjusted the seals, I didn't feel like a protector. I felt like a student, like she's showing me something, not with words, but with presence, with stillness, with silence so full it begins to speak back. I asked her once, days ago, why she never cried. She blinked, then turned away, as if the answer was obvious, as if crying was something the old world had permission for. Now, as we prepare to walk toward a signal that may be long dead, I'm not walking alone. She's not a burden, not even a companion. She's a frequency I'm still learning to hear. We've begun the walk. Left the station just before first light. Though light is a generous term these days. The sky was red, not warm red, not the kind you used to watch from porches or rooftops. This was the heavy red, the kind that leans on the bones of buildings and bleeds into your mask filter before you've taken your second breath. The road ahead is quiet. Not empty. There's a difference. The ruins have shape, presence, the husks of things that mattered once. Glass underfoot, soft and crunchless now. Moss that has turned gray with memory. The silence here feels like observation, like the world is watching us walk and has nothing left to say. We don't speak either. The child walks beside me, steps light but confident. She doesn't look back. I try not to. We follow broken lines, power routes, drainage paths, skeletal highway ribs. It's all rust and reflection. And sometimes, I swear, we pass through the places that remember. A wind that hums like song. A beam of light that holds too long in a broken window. The red above us pulses faintly, like it's alive, like it's waiting for something. I don't know if this is the right way. I don't know if right exists anymore, but there's a road, and it hasn't told us to stop. I've been thinking about belief. Not the kind that anchors to gods or governments. I mean the small kind, the quiet kind. The belief you carry like a flicker in your chest, even when it burns no brighter than a match in wind. We chase signals. That's what hope is, I think. A signal without coordinates. A voice with no source. You follow it not because it's loud, but because it repeats. Because it dares to exist. I used to laugh at the people who believed in gardens, in domes, in sealed sanctuaries where rain didn't sting and food grew on trellises again. But maybe they weren't naive. Maybe they were just tired of silence. Because silence. It's the loudest killer. This broadcast, it was never about information. It was about echo, to remind myself that even if I was alone in this airless ruin, my voice still moved, still left. And now that I'm not alone, the voice inside me grows quieter. Not gone, just shared. She walks beside me, and I realize hope isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not stopping. Sometimes it's just deciding to reply. There's no map, just a direction. And that maybe is enough. This is Miles, still following the signal, still believing in the reply. We stopped for water beside a collapsed antenna mast. The child pointed toward the receiver, the portable rig strapped to my chest. I almost didn't turn it on. The battery was low, the atmosphere too thick. But I did, and it was there. A voice. A woman's voice. Warped, but whole. Clearer than last time. No coordinates this time, just 3 words. We hear you. She said it once, and then gone. No repeat, no static burst, just that thread of connection. Clean. Intact. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My breath caught somewhere deep. Not in my throat, not in my lungs. Lower. Where memory hides. Where grief hardens. The girl looked at me. She didn't ask what it meant. She didn't need to. She just nodded, and we kept walking. No confirmation, no assurance, but that's not how hope works. It doesn't wait for certainty. It moves. It carries. The sky above us stayed red. The horizon stayed blurred. But the voice, that voice was real. And that's enough. We walk slower now. Not from fear. From reverence. From knowing we are not broadcasting into emptiness anymore. Someone is listening. And we're still coming. This is miles. Red sky morning. And we walk through it anyway.